Welcome everyone to the Making of a Nobody Studios live stream series. I'm Sejal Thakkar, and it's my honor to be the host for today's conversation, where we're going to be taking you behind the scenes of the making of a nobody. And so it's all about looking back at our achievements, but also looking forward, right? What are some of the exciting things that we have planned as we continue to grow and evolve? And so I'm honored to have Andy Walsh, our Senior VP of Incubation, and our Chief Nobody, Mark McNally, joining me today. Welcome back.
Thanks, Sejal.
Thank you, Sejal.
Great to see you both. And I want to remind everybody, look, this conversation isn't complete without all of you that are joining us here today, right? So look, this live stream is being broadcasted on several different social media channels. We encourage you to engage with us, right? Share your perspectives. And this is all going to help us shape the future of the making of a nobody. So your participation is definitely important. And if you're on LinkedIn, I can see your comments as they're sort of coming up. And so I'm happy to highlight some of those. And if you've got some questions for Mark and Andy, throw them in there and we'll try to get to them during the live stream. And so without further ado, let's just jump right in. And so Mark, maybe, if you could take us back to the early days of the making of a nobody, right? What was the passion and the purpose behind it?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, it started out as just my posts, right? My LinkedIn, my social posts were just, I think the core intention was to be sharing raw. There's a lot of people that were intrigued by the journey, but I just wanted to share raw about the successes, the victories, the things we were learning, things we were challenged with, and we really kind of became more of my journal, just every single week or every couple of times a week, I'd be like, I'm struggling with this thing or this thing just happened. I would just go out there and share raw, this is another thing that happened in the making of a nobody. And I think it started to build, there are certain people, if I didn't post for a few weeks, that would text me, but there are people that I hadn't talked to in years. And they'd be like, when's the next TMOAN, So I realized that people were watching and people were listening. And, after doing it, religiously for a few years, I'd get on calls with folks, and instead of spending, the first 20 minutes of a call doing the background and the story, people would be like, oh yeah, I know all about you guys. I've been watching the TMOAN posts for years. And so, that helped. And that's just realized that was, again, people were listening, something was resonating. And, a couple of different times the voice has changed a little bit, and we tried to go unintentionally went to corporate. And we always try to go back to the basics. It's like, no, this is meant to be kind of this raw, open sharing of things. And I think you're the one that, approached me about doing a podcast on this. And, I said, heck yeah. And we've been trying to do that ever since, is just, expose things. And now we're at an interesting moment where, like, what is the future version of TMOAN going to look like, or the evolution in terms of topics and different things. And I think the core is the same. We want to be raw, but it's not just one way directional, right? We're also looking for interaction. We're looking for, we want to talk openly about the things that we're looking to solve for. And maybe somebody in the audience reaches out and they've got an idea or an experience, or they can contribute in some way. So I really do think, and Andy and I were talking about this, and it just all seemed to come to head where, Andy's in charge every day of, all the incubation that we're doing on the newcos. And he was saying the same thing. Like, I want to start sharing more openly about some of the things that we're, dealing with in the studio, and also to, get an audience and people who can help us. And I'm like, that's actually the next natural evolution of the making of a nobody, is just to make sure that we go back to that basic of our, sharing. But I think a lot of what we did in this first year or so, Sejal, was talking about the origination of the studio and our concepts and our core values. And now we can shift more into just what did we learn this week? What are we struggling with this week? And at least the theory is that'll be really valuable to folks, but we'd love to hear people's comments.
Yeah, no, I always love hearing about what the driving forces are, right, behind these kind of what I call impactful initiative, right? So I remember when you and I first spoke, right, and I was like, who's Mark McNally and what's Nobody Studios all about? That's exactly what I did, right? I went straight to your LinkedIn profile and I started combing through all of your posts, and that's when I ran across the TMOAN blog posts that you were doing. And I was going to say the same thing to you. I was really impressed when I started reading those, because for me, when I was somebody that didn't know anything about what you wanted to do or what the studio was about, it was really your raw, unfiltered thoughts. You know, it was kind of like you said, your journal. You were just writing them down. And I love that because it didn't have all the like, you know, the marketing touches and all of this stuff. It was just you telling us kind of, and I was really, that's what really struck me was your boldness, you know, and your originality of what your vision was for where we are. And obviously it resonated with me because look, it's 3.5 years later and I'm still here with you on this journey. Right. And so I'm really excited about the evolution. And Andy, when Mark was telling me about this, it was kind of funny because I don't even think he finished his sentence. And I was like, absolutely agree. And I was like, because it's true. You know, I think now it makes perfect sense because you're dealing day to day with all of the new companies that we're building. And so you have that insight behind the scenes, like stuff that we all want to learn from and hear about. Right. And so before we talk about some of your ideas, because I know Mark mentioned to me some of your, you know, fantastic ideas on how we continue to evolve TMOAN. But Mark, I just wanted to ask you, you know, as we're kind of reflecting on the TMOAN journey, and you were kind of starting to talk about that, you know, what has been the most rewarding part of this, of putting out the blogs and doing this live stream together up to this point? What has been the most rewarding part of this journey for you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly what I probably just ended with was just talking to folks that immediately already have an understanding of how we think, or, you know, our journey, probably even personalities. Like, you know, I'll join a call with somebody that will say like, I feel like I already know you, Mark, you know, and it's like, it just helps you add velocity to conversations and add velocity to relationships. Again, if we're showing up the right way and we're leaning in and trying to be transparent and genuine, then that's true, right? If you're not bringing that to the table, I don't think that works. But I think that's certainly how we are trying to do this. And I think that's been the most rewarding part, is just the velocity of relationship building and how fast you can move with a common understanding because of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think from the feedback that I've gotten from, you know, from people who have read the TMOAN blogs or seen the live stream has all been positive. You know, it really does allow people to kind of see what our views are, what our values are, where we are today, where we're going. And this conversation is a perfect example of us, how we're continuously looking at ways to improve or change the direction of what we're doing in order to just make it, you know, grow as we grow and evolve. So Andy, I would love for you to share some of your ideas. Mark was starting to tell me about some of this, and I know we're going to brainstorm some more ideas later, but tell us about, like, where do you see TMOAN evolving as we continue to grow?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel like I've been here for, say, call it 6 months now, and I love the expression about standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think that, like, what's been created to this point has been like no like small feat, in the sense of like growth, the team, the process, everything that's happened right now, and to have businesses live. And I always enjoy like hearing the stories from day one with Mark and yourself, and you've both been here a lot longer than me. And it feels like having joined now, it's a really nice inflection point as far as the ability to take what's happened so far across not just the studio, but also the portfolio, like the people, the process, all the things that have gone well, and of course, all the things that haven't gone like we anticipated. And that's part of the startup journey, right? And I think like within that, there's lots of different verticals that you can talk to. And Sejal, we've had conversations that have been really, for me, exciting to have, which has been around that psychological safety and understanding the human element. And if you were to sort of step outside what we do day to day and look at LinkedIn, and you were to look at the venture industry, investment, etc., there's a lot of common themes you see. And I think mental health is definitely one of those. I see a lot of right now around investment and fundraising, very topical. Obviously, we're going through a massive sort of digital evolution right now at pace, with AI getting integrated into various systems, processes, but also creating new businesses. And I think all these things are happening at the same time. And as far as how we understand that, navigate that, it's a daily sort of very proactive process on what we're doing. And the legacy of what you're doing with this content, or what you've done with this like TMOAN so far, has enabled a lot of people to understand Nobody Studios, our philosophy, our businesses, etc. And I think now the ability to be able to educate people, because I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and it's interesting the feedback that I hear as far as people have a perception of a venture studio. An venture studio is very much, and we can, obviously you guys have talked about this a lot in previous episodes, but the definition of a venture studio can be quite broad. So as far as foundational information as well, in the sense of like, what are the various permeations of a venture studio? How do they operate? And like from small to large, like legacy, categories, thesis, there's a lot of things there to go as well. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about, as far as like, because it's quite the list there that I've gone through, but I can recap that quite succinctly. But the thing that I'm interested on too is that across our portfolio, we've got some really interesting people. Some of them have featured on here so far, but what I love are the backgrounds of the people that are part of the Nobody family, as far as what's inspired them in their journey and how they think about their day every day, like getting under the hood of who they are and what inspires them as well. And what I see, there's still a collective job for the industry to sort of to set the right expectation about the strength of a venture studio and the way that we think. And I think what you've been able to do is sort of set the foundations quite elegantly as far as Nobody and our philosophy and how we work. So like to sum up, so that is digestible, as far as thinking about the people, the process that we have there, and then also the innovation piece, and that, like, how do we maintain this active approach of always like looking for opportunities, and they can come with a new business idea, but they can also come in how you run a business. And I think that's the strength of a studio, is how all of those collective learnings can be applied at scale across our whole portfolio. And that's the piece for me that I'm really passionate about. It is like something that I do once, I repeat 5, 10, 20 times. And the benefit of that is to the people in the business, it's to the customers who use that service, but it's also to the investment industry. Like, they're the things that allow us to be effective. And that's the piece that I think that will be exciting to explore on future episodes.
Yeah, I love all of that. Mark, did you want to add anything as far as where we see TMOAN evolving as we continue to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would ditto everything Andy just said, and I would say, I'm definitely wanting to bring more of just like the reality of what we're dealing with any given week. If there's a new challenge that we're dealing with or something we're trying to solve, like, we might have it in our head how we're going to solve it. We might have a plan, but I think just talking it out sometimes allows the audience to engage. Someone might come up with a better idea, or someone might raise their hand and say, I've got experience in this. And we are, one of our DNA points is, as you know well, is to be crowd infused, meaning that we share openly for a reason. We're looking for that impact. We're looking for that input. We're looking for the feedback, and we think that makes us better. So that's one of my big driving forces now, is like, it shouldn't be hard for us to come up with topics, because we're dealing with 50 challenges a week. So we'll just have to look at those 50 and pick one or two to talk about that week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I was mentioning to both of you earlier that I went to a networking mixer yesterday. And so I want to give a shout out to James Gee with Startup Grind. He did an awesome job at hosting this networking event. And I was able to catch a bunch of founders' pitches. And, he did a really good job at bringing the right people together, the right mix of people, so that we were able to have a lot of great conversations. And one of the conversations I was talking to somebody there is, about how the studio ecosystem is dealing with all these different kinds of challenges that we've never, haven't dealt with at this sort of gravity or severity that we're dealing with right now. So some of the things like, obviously access to capital is one of the big ones that's more challenging now with just what's going on politically and just in the world overall. And so it's making it difficult for these founders to get this financing necessary to grow and scale. And then one other person chimed in that talking about like how we're relying more on digital technologies and how that's creating all these new issues like cyber attacks and all this other stuff. And I think what I would love to see is, as we evolve, is also like to kind of share our discoveries and insights, that we're learning in real time, so that we can help build that awareness and guide other founders or other people that might be looking to build a startup or a venture studio from what the lessons we're learning, right? So those are some of the things that came up yesterday at the networking mixer that I was like, oh, that would be good for us to kind of explore as well. So, Andy, I'm looking forward to some of your suggestions and feedback and seeing how we evolve. And the question I was going to ask you too is, how do you envision us really using this I would say, what value that we have, that we gain from our audience, that in that they can provide real-time feedback to us, right? That interaction can happen live versus a blog. So what are some ideas you have about how we can, improve the engagement and really take the feedback that we get to help us shape the future of the making of the Nobody?
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that I remember very early when I first met Mark. Like, he talked openly around that, an idea can be found anywhere from anyone, and trying to protect an idea is counterintuitive, because like what you're doing, you're actually stopping progress. And what he means by that is the ability to get that dynamic feedback that you need to continue to offer value to someone, to like, how do you make their life more effective, or how do you offer them something they've never had before, solving problems, etc. And you need that feedback to be dynamic to be able to do it, because it's very easy to use historical reference to make sometimes executive decisions. And as much as we've got a really experienced team, and that's the strength of Nobody, like going wider to the crowd. And we talk about that a lot. And you guys have talked about from like early investors that we had into the business to people that have committed their time and services to help achieve our mission as well. There's some really interesting people that love to be able to have an opinion. And I've found personally that my own career journey is like making myself vulnerable as well. Is that I've got good expertise that's very broad, but there's plenty of things that I don't know. And I think that for me, surrounding myself with people that are smarter than I am is something that I love to do. Like, I love to learn. And I think that opening up our portfolio to challenges that we're having or things that we've seen, and allowing others to contribute to that, I think there's something beautiful in the startup community. And I think people can sometimes be a little bit too protective of what they're doing. And sometimes for like legal reasons, like there's things that you do need to not disclose, of course. I'm not saying to be completely flippant with some of those things, but the more people we can bring in from our crowd formally, and that starts from ideas right through to businesses that we're refining, it can be really small things. And one of the things that we'll go into in the future episode is how we actually think about the bench, which is our suite of experts that come in and help us do things, and how we scale. Like, we've got this bold mission to launch 100 businesses in 5 years. And to do that, you need to be really buttoned up on how you deliver those and the people that are in our family.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Min, we've got Min Bogata joining us. He had this comment. I just put it up here for both of you to take a look at. Google just told me there are 800 venture studios in the world, which is fantastic. Nobody seems to be one of the few that puts the crowd at the heart of everything it does. Right. And I love everything you just said, Andy. I think it's crucial. So, we've still got a few more minutes left. So maybe you could share a couple of recent breakthroughs that we've had in the last couple of weeks at Nobody Studios that you're most excited about. Maybe you could, each of you maybe could share one with the people that are joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with Avalify. They're at a really sort of interesting stage in their business. So Nick and William, our co-founders, two really smart guys who have built this process and system to be able to look at global patent data and using an AI tool to be able to not only analyze it, but analyze it in a way that gives people confidence that when they're looking at technology and patents, that they're able to understand the ecosystem, understand the competitors, etc. We launched that 3 to 4 months ago, and that sort of first stage when you launch is probably one of the most confronting for any startup, right? You've got dreams, expectations, and it's been a lot of hard work to get to that point. And I think the ability to navigate that and still be positive, pragmatic, and learn those lessons. But where we're at right now is across every vertical within their business, from sales to marketing to fundraising, which we're active in right now, is there's patterns and trends that you start to see. And it can be from your target audience through to the messaging that you're using, to paid media performance. And there's a lot of things there where we're actively testing and learning. And we're at a good point now where we've actually just had a couple of workshops to interrogate and really sort of unpack all of our own thinking. And it's that can be confronting, right? You get attached to something within a startup as an idea. And if you've worked on it for a long period of time, it's sometimes hard to let go of that. You've got to be really sort of vulnerable and be open to those things. So I'll talk to something simple like paid performance. So we're working with a business called Crowd Tamers and a gentleman named Trevor, and he's got a fantastic moustache, but two, a lot of positive energy. And I think that the way that we work with him is to look at within that sort of target audience and certain messaging, like where are we seeing traction? And obviously paid media is a very methodical process as far as looking at channels, messaging, click-through rates. There's a lot of historical data. So being able to quantify that information and understand based off benchmarks, based off our brand and target audience, it gives us really rich insight that we can apply not just to paid media performance, but across the board in sales and marketing efforts too. So what we do is we test that, we interrogate it, we put it back into the pot, and then that information gives us one really sort of strong data point to be able to help build and refine what we're doing.
Love it. I love it. And I think that's exactly the kind of detail that's helpful to people to understand, how we're dealing with those situations and how we're innovating in those situations. So thank you for sharing those examples, Andy. Mark, did you want to add any?
Yeah, maybe I'll just take it a little bit different direction, right? I would say if we were to unpack one thing that we were trying to really dial in and get, figured out, I'll take what Andy said about, Trevor and Crowd Tamers. Paid media is one part of a demand generation funnel, right? But there's, 10 different ways to drive traffic, right? So you can have a content strategy that drives, an SEO, organic search traffic. There's a social strategy. There's affiliate marketing. There's, all these other things. So we are really looking at, how to, create a sophisticated, repeatable demand generation machine. And that's probably going to be a few things that we do internally really well. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 really great vendors that we love and trust. It's probably going to be a few technologies along the way, but it should be easier and easier for us to spin up a NewCo if we know we've got the demand generation or traffic thing solved. And you can look at, again, let's say it's a la carte menu. Here's 10 different ways to drive traffic. For some companies, it won't be relevant, right? Like maybe a content strategy is not relevant for some companies, right? So you can look at that list and decide which things you're going to double down on. So I think that's, I would say that's one of the things we are looking to solve for. So if there's anybody in the audience that is, got inspiration, ideas, talent, resources, whatever, we're all ears. It's something we expect to, make one of our strengths this year as a studio.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go with this last question, right? What is our ask for the people that are watching this live stream, right? And all of our podcasts actually, but specifically on the Making Even Nobody, our purpose is to share these kinds of insights like what Mark and Andy just talked about. And we'd love to hear from you about the topics that are important to you and and share your perspective. So Andy, how can our audience actively contribute to, the Making of a Nobody or to Nobody Studios? What are some suggestions you have and how they might be able to share their feedback, give us their perspectives, or get involved in some of the things that we're doing?
Yeah, for sure. There's been a program that's been running for a while within Nobody, which is a talent roundtable. It's where we sort of pull back the curtain a little bit and give people a chance to really get into the weeds of Nobody as far as like what are all the things that we do, how do we work, what does our process look like, etc. And what we're looking to do is actually expand those subject matters. So we may have a session where we actually focus on something specific around product or technology, around marketing. And what we'd encourage people to do is go to our website. The website address is on the screen right now. And you can actually find that information and register to go one of those sessions. And within that, we'll be able to answer questions, but we'll also have a chance to meet people and understand people's experience. Because in a world that's changing so rapidly, like we have a great range of talent across Nobody Studios, but we rely on a much bigger group of people. Sometimes you have very specific skills in the sense of they do something better than anybody else because that's all they do. So for us, it's sort of one, it's moving forward at pace, which is one of our key foundations as a studio, but also it allows us to scale our team and build a relationship with someone who not only gets the job done, but adds value in a specific skill that, you know, right now it's impossible for any company of any size to actually actively have all the right people employed full-time internally, because the world is such, you know, a changing thing, and consumers change, and there's new things that we have to accommodate and adapt to every day.
Yeah, and to add to what Andy was saying, he's talking about on our website, if you go to join the journey, and in there it says test your talent. And if you click in there, you'll see a calendar, and we're holding these roundtables every couple of weeks. And we do ask everybody to fill out the form, and we even encourage people to submit a short 2-minute video. And, you know, I always recommend it to people that are coming to me and they're inquiring to do that short video, because there's a lot of opportunity, you know, as we're building these companies, there's a lot of different places we might be able to plug people in. And so somebody actually watches these videos and we look out for opportunities where we might be able to support each other, right? So definitely submit that information and attend one of the talent roundtables. That's a great way to share your feedback. And then join us on these live streams. So, you know, all of our prior live streams are on our YouTube channel at Nobody Crowd. You can watch them if you missed them. You can comment on it. And we're always looking back at the feedback we get. And actually, some of the feedback we received, Mark and I have actually done a session over some of the feedback that we've gotten, right? So we do actually pay attention to the feedback we're getting. So Mark, did you want to add any last words before we sign out for today?
Yeah, just your last question was how can they be engaged? I think, you know, exactly what you just said is what I wanted to highlight. Just ask, you know, join these calls and ask questions. You know, I think this is going to be way more interesting if, you know, if we're talking about a certain topic, but people are challenging us or asking us to go deeper, or, you know, challenge us and say, hey, on a future episode, can you unpack this, or can you talk about that? Like, that is really, as much as we try to inspire the things we see every day and share openly, it's not meant to be one way. So I think that's really how the audience can, you know, steer us and get the most out of this journey is challenge us.
Yeah, thank you. And again, shout out to Kimberly Weefling for joining us. She agrees with Min and says truly impressive and innovative. Thank you, Kimberly, for being a supporter of Nobody Studios. Thank you, everybody, for joining Andy, Mark, and I and having this conversation. We look forward to the evolution of the Making of a Nobody and going even deeper into what is all the exciting things we're doing at Nobody Studios. So join the journey, go to our website, you know, to go to one of those talent roundtables, and we'll see you all next Friday at the same time. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.